Hello and welcome back. This is webinar 2 for the day in regards to navigating my aged care, and specifically today we're looking at the assessment process, both RAS and ACAT assessments. And I have some experts in the field with me today. Just quickly acknowledge again that this is brought to you by OPAN, the Older Persons Advocacy Network, and I'm Marie Montgomery, your host. We need to acknowledge the wonderful Navigators Trials by COTA, and which is funded by the Australian Government. Today I have Judy Greenwood here. Hi, Judy. Your Assistant Director, Assessment Delivery Section, Home Support and Assessment Branch in Home Aged Care Division, Department of Health. Thank you. Thanks. And Sue McGuigan. Hi, Sue. Thank you for being with us. You're the New South Wales ACAT and RAS statewide training officer for the New South Wales Ministry of Health. Also, RAS Manager, Clinical Lead, Northern New South Wales. Is that correct? That's right. Yeah, and ACT? No, ACAT.
Yeah, ACAT.
Sorry, my bad. And so you're still being and doing ACAT assessments, is that correct?
Yeah, and RAS.
Yeah, and RAS, yeah. So you're a busy lady.
Very busy.
Yeah, good. We had a little bit of a chat in between the breaks, and very passionate ladies, and we're honoured for them to be on our panel today. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure. All right, Q&A, please, please, please. Love your feedback. Any questions whatsoever, right top-hand corner, and you can forward that through to me, and I can pick it up on my little phone here. There is a Facebook page. Please, we'd really, really love you to join the Facebook page. The more discussion we can have, the more interaction and, I guess, education in regards to navigating my aged care. So go to groups and it's navigating, and you'll find today the links, in the next couple of days, the links and the pertinent points that we have discussed. Beautiful. Excellent. Well, let's jump right into this particular second webinar, which we're going to look more in detail at RAS and ACAT. I guess specifically what they are and what is involved in the assessments, and also the types of care that will come from each of those assessments. But we wanted to also acknowledge the great work of the department in their website. So is it possible, Tom, to bring up the department's website? Now, Judy, there is, you know this quite well, I'm sure.
And assessors do too. This is probably the main place that the assessment workforce would go for my aged care information. So if people want to look at information from the perspective of the workforce, this is a place to go, because the My Aged Care website is really for the consumer, and that's a great place for consumers, and it has things in language that is very consumer friendly. And then we go to the workforce language and guidance documents. So it's just for people that are interested to dig a little deeper on what an assessor does. So we just we promote it, or maybe not promote, but just make people aware of it.
Okay, absolutely. So again, and there are assessors and advocates and other professionals watching these webinars. So again, the more information and guidance that we can get to up-to-date information in regards to assessment, the better.
So this manual is a very good one for showing the end-to-end assessment process. So that's quite a good resource for people.
Fantastic, good. Excellent, thank you for showing us that. All right, so let's have a look now at the two types of assessments. There is the RAS, Regional Assessment Service, and also the Commonwealth, that's entry level for Commonwealth Home Supports, and then the ACAT assessments, the Aged Care Assessment Team. What really, I guess, is the absolute difference between the two for understanding if you're going to get a referral to one of these?
Well,
Yes.
well, The regional assessment service assessment is more entry level to the aged care system, and really, apart from looking at all your aged care service needs, the particular focus is the Commonwealth Home Support Program.
Mm-hmm.
So that is its own program with probably 21 services or more, probably not all available in every area in Australia, but it has quite a wide range of services to support a person in their home. But the difference is that if someone is getting more complex needs, the home support's just really one or two services, or and they could be change over time, so it might not be the same services. But when someone's starting to get need a more coordinated care arrangement, package of care, they will need to look at a high level of assessment, and then you get into the framework of applying for care under the Aged Care Act, and that's what I'm saying, it's a formal process. But the services that's looking at is those things like residential care, an aged care home, home care packages, which go from levels 1 to 4 in care, and flexible care, which is transition care and short-term restorative care.
Yeah, which we will be looking at each of those in detail along this journey, absolutely. So there's lots of different services. I guess when it comes to that first entry level of the regional assessment, is that looking at things like transport or cleaning or Meals on Wheels? Is that where
So entry level means someone has identified for themselves, or someone has helped them identify that they are struggling in one or more areas of their daily life. So if it's only one or two areas, that will be an assessment by a home support assessor under the Regional Assessment Service. And it doesn't always mean that you're going to be linked to a service. So what they're going to do is come and talk to you, look at how you do things, move around the house with you, try and get a really good picture of how you're managing day to day with your tasks. And then if they can identify one or two areas where you're struggling, look at what the solutions for that might be. So there is a lot of evidence out there to support the fact that the incidental benefits we get from just doing our daily tasks are really good for our quality of life and our health and well-being. So My Aged Care does not want to come in and take away from you things that you are able to do. What My Aged Care and what the assessment structure wants to do is to support you with areas where you are struggling. Now, we might be able to talk to you about a certain piece of equipment, a daily living type of aid that might help you to be able to complete the tasks that you're struggling with, problem solved. We might look at the arrangement in your house and the safety aspects and think, okay, maybe there's some home modifications that are needed here, and again, this person is now independent, job done. We might think, actually, there's a different way of doing that task, and so we can give some information on doing that task that might help you, again, to be independent and manage for yourself. Or we might do a combination of all of those things. Or we might try some of those things and then work out that, okay, we have helped this person to be a little bit more independent and to get that benefit and that satisfaction of doing that part of that job. But for this other part of the job, they actually need a service, in which case we would go to providing a service. And that would be under the Commonwealth Home Support Program. But your assessors also have really good knowledge about other things that are out there that can support you. So it might be an exercise program your local council runs. It might be a social group the RSL Club runs. There are a whole lot of avenues of support out there that can help you live a full and satisfying life that your assessor can link you to. And My Aged Care, of course, is a huge part of it, but that's not all that we would look at. It might be a community health service that's run by your local health district. So assessment is a whole lot of things. Once you start to get one or two of those services in place, and as Judy was saying, your needs are getting a little bit more complicated, then it's time to think about maybe moving to a comprehensive assessment with the Aged Care Assessment team. We should say in Victoria they're called ACAS, or Aged Care Assessment Service. So, but it's the same group doing the same job. And then it just becomes easier to have a coordinated package of care with one provider when your needs are complex, rather than having several different providers who provide different services coming in and out of your home.
Okay, excellent. Lovely, thank you very much. I've just got a question from Gwen. What happens if you believe an ACAT assessment might be more appropriate, but the call centre sends a RAS assessment? So, Sue, I'm going to hand this one to you.
And Gwen, that does happen, and quite a fair bit, and I guess it is sort of based on the information that's available to the contact centre at the time of the referral, and I don't know in your circumstance whether that was a phone referral or you can do an online referral. Sometimes the information in that is a little bit lacking. So there's sort of no wrong entry. The contact centre will have gone with the information and thought, okay, this is sounding like we can start with a regional assessment service. If when the regional assessment service comes to your home and they talk to you about your care needs and observe how you're functioning, they think, well, actually this needs ACAT, they can refer on to ACAT. So, but at the same time, they might identify that they can put in a service that will help you until your ACAT assessment happens. So really, you know, there shouldn't be a disadvantage if that happens.
No. And I guess they're very nuanced. It's very difficult for getting, I imagine, getting information to begin with without physically being there, without the person, and quite nuanced to their environment and to the interaction.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And they do have a guidance on which pathway is most suitable based on the responses of the questions that they're asking. So, yes, as we said, sometimes there's might be not quite getting to the right spot, but then there's a chance. But with the ACAT assessment, as we were saying, it is quite a formal application for it to become a care recipient under the Aged Care Act. It's a very formal process. And maybe the doctors know about that one, but they don't know about the home support as much because it's a relatively new sort of workforce and assessment. But we wouldn't want to put you into the complex group if you could manage with a different approach to service delivery, and as Sue was saying, some of those innovative ideas around promoting your wellness and doing things to get back on your feet, that sort of thing. So it's just And
there's so many, as you said, local community groups, just little social gatherings as well that do provide amazing services that you can join, etc.
And all assessments are organisations over the country. Part of the requirement really is that they're experts in their local area and know all those services. On the website, I think you probably covered that last time, but it's really the ones that are funded by the Commonwealth Government that are promoted, because people like to know that they're kind of assured of those ones, that they'll be linked to other services, and then, as say, all those community organisations. So there's quite a lot that the assessor knows on how to develop the plan of support for you that's right for you.
In your region. Yeah, great. Fantastic. All right, so let's have a look. We've sort of briefly discussed earlier in regards to where the assessment takes place, but what actually in more detail is involved in each?
Okay, so I'll take that one. So a referral comes through the portal for a home support assessment. That goes to, most of the teams have someone called a scheduler or an intake point who deals with our referrals, so the referral is accepted. We do have a time frame of accepting referrals within 3 days, which we stick to very tightly across Australia. So the referral is accepted. The relative needs of the referrals are looked at by each team. So some people's needs will be slightly higher than others. So we sort of triage and work out who we're going to call first and who needs to be seen first. Within quite.
That's important for everybody to know. That priority, is important.
Yes, you are always one of a group of people that we're trying to see. And so even though we triage and see some people before others, most people are seen within quite tight time frames anyway, regardless of whether it's a RAS or an ACAT assessment. But anyway, the RAS assessor, you're telephoned by the scheduler, an appointment is made, and then your assessor turns up at the appointed time and day. They'll want to see some identification, which we talked about at the previous webinar, just to make sure they've got all your details correct and they're with the right person at the right place. And then they're going to have just a conversation with you really and try and work out what your care needs and how well you are doing in aspects of your daily life. They'll probably move around the home with you and target specific tasks and areas where you are having difficulty. And then together you sort of work out a strategy and where to from there, because you're the expert in your needs. So we are absolutely listening to what you are telling us and where you think your concerns lie. We might identify a concern that exists but is of no consequence to you. You're not worried about that. Your worry is something else. So by the end of the assessment, together we've identified what your concerns are. So that's the things that are worrying you. And then we try to work together to establish some goals. So where do you want to see yourself? So where is your end point? And then we'll come up with some recommendations, which, as we said, could be funded Commonwealth services or might be some other sort of strategies, equipment, non-funded groups, whatever it might be. At the end of the assessment, we're going to leave you with our information and our contact details, as well as the My Aged Care contact details. And we're going to make sure that you have in your head a clear picture of what's going to happen next. So that would be a home support assessment. Do you want me to talk about ACAT?
Yes, absolutely. ACAT's next, so that's home support. Now we're going into ACAT.
Yeah, so ACAT, the process is fairly similar.
Yeah.
So again, your referral comes from My Aged Care. Again, you're sort of triaged according to your need, and then our intake or scheduling person will make contact with you to make an appointment. For both people, I should have said you'll be asked, do you want someone to be there, to be present with you during the assessment? And that could be a family member through to a neighbour through to a more formal person such as an advocate. That person may or may not be your representative listed in My Aged Care.
Okay.
And if you don't want anyone, that's perfectly fine as well. So the ACAT assessor then arrives, does the same thing, just does that identity check to make sure they've got all those details correct. They follow the same sort of structure as the home support assessment, but they actually go into more detail in each section of your life. So we're talking about your social connections, your family connections, any medical conditions you might have and medications you're taking, your physical health and well-being, so how mobile and active are you. They'll look at your moods, so sort of the psychology involved, and also your memory and thinking, so your cognition. So they'll gather information from you and from any other sources that might be relevant to then come to a decision at the end as to how we're best going to help you. So some people ACAT see are actually looking to or needing to move into residential aged care, so your approval might be in relation to that. But most of the people we see are looking for that more coordinated level of assistance at home, which would be a home care package. And there are 4 levels of home care package, from basic to complex needs. So the ACAT assessment happens like that, but that's not the end of the story. So they leave the home and they explain to you again, leave their information, they explain what the next steps are. Both groups, home support and ACAT, come back and write up your assessment, and your information goes into the My Aged Care system. For the home support assessor, they deal with all referrals and recommendations and finalise their assessment. But for ACAT, there's an additional process, which is the approval and delegation process. So whether Judy wants to talk that through a little bit.
Quite an involved process. Before we go any further,
yes, I was just trying to a little bit.
Just in regards when the assessors, both of the different types, come into your home, how do they, acknowledge that they are from My Aged Care?
So we would always introduce ourselves and explain that we have a referral that's come to us from My Aged Care, and that we're either with this regional assessment service or with this aged care assessment team. So yes, that is the very first thing we would do, is introduce ourselves and explain why we're here and how we came to be with you.
Yeah, thanks.
And we would always have some sort of formal ID, so it's a little bit different for different organisations.
Yeah, and I think that's also something to understand, is that is slightly different across the states, and it's not absolute the same for each assessor. Would that be correct? Yeah. It's just, we may have people watching from Northern Territory, Queensland, WA, and we tend to, in here, being New South, but a little bit more New South focused. So for everyone out there, we do acknowledge you, and just be aware that there are nuances across the states. In the information sheets that we are going to produce, we are going to try and address some of those nuances as well, if we possibly can. Thank you. Excellent. So, into the delegate process.
Oh, I was going to say, before we get to delegates, can I say I really believe the importance of the carer's role as well?
Yeah,
the assessment
absolutely.
process, and how part of those domains that Sue was talking about, there's things around the carer and what the carer is doing in that support for the person to contribute to the care.
Yeah.
And sometimes the carers may be finding it a bit difficult and getting a bit stressed, or they mightn't be able to, we can't assume that they're always able to continue, or they might need more support themselves. So the assessors might, part of their determinations are also around how can the carer keep doing what they're doing? Does the carer need support, and if so, where do they guide the carer to go to for that support? And part of the determination when we get to the delegate is that some of the decisions around how much care you need formally might be on balance. You might have lots of support, and so you don't, and some of the people in your life are happy to do things, that care role for you, but then in other cases with the same conditions, there might be more formal support required. So the assessor's looking at lots of different things during the assessment.
Big role.
Yes. It's a balancing act, and they're really good points. So the assessor at whatever level is balancing what you can do as a client, what informal support structures you have, any formal supports that are already in place, and what are the immediate needs. So we're looking at what are your immediate needs, and yes, can they be sustained into the short future, I suppose. We're not looking far ahead.
Right.
We're working on a premise that things, in a perfect world, things will stay fairly well, and that not everyone will deteriorate or be less able to do things. There are a lot of people that we put in some sort of support or service, and that's fine. That does them for the rest of their days, and there are other people that we need to keep adding things in. So when we do the assessment, we're looking at all of those things, and what is your need now and for the just foreseeable future. We're not trying to predict next year or the year after.
Yes, that's an important point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why I have experts in the room. Beautiful. And look, I think it is such a pertinent point that we remember the carers, as you brought up, Judy, because it is a big role, and it can get to the point where it is isolating for the carer as well. So support of both is,
Yes, and another point I'd make on the process too about is with, there can be carers, but there are also people from those culturally, linguistically, diverse backgrounds, and their needs for interpreters, or the need for people to have an assessment in a way where they can communicate with the assessor. So that's also part of the preparation as well, to make sure, and I don't know how that works, Sue, on the ground,
culturally sensitive,
when someone needs those sort of support.
So at the time of making the appointment, there would be a consideration given to, is a translator necessary or an interpreter necessary for this appointment, and if so, then that's worked into the time and the date so that we can make that happen. I think the other thing is that's also the benefit to your assessors, is that they've had the additional training in looking at diverse groups, and so when they see that someone has a background that is from a different country and it may be a different language, and English is a second language, we can take that into account and factor that in, and we also can look back at the information on that particular country and some of their cultural norms, I suppose, and make sure that we're accounting for those when we come to do the assessment.
Again, it comes back to being assessor is such an involved role I will be frank, I have a higher respect of the role that you actually undertake, because you're individual going into a home in a short frame. So what would an assessment time take?
So for a regional assessment service, you're looking at probably an hour, maybe an hour and a half at times. For an ACAT assessment, you probably hour and a half, I suppose, the same, but it's at a different level. And depending on how complex it is, you may be there even longer. So some RAS assessments, if it's a very simple situation, might only be 3/4 of an hour.
Okay. But the ACAT obviously is more, there might be more behind the scenes work for an ACAT assessment before you get your recommendation or approval. So we could talk about that.
Yes, I think that's
talking to doctors and gathering evidence from other healthcare providers to actually get other views besides the in-home assessment is one very important part, but there might be other information that's needed as well.
Yeah, totally multidisciplinary. Again, I have a lot more respect for the machinations of what actually happens post-assessment and the interaction with others to assess and come up with the appropriate outcomes.
Yes.
So
post or before as well. I think there would be a bit of that sort of.
So for an aged care assessment, generally the assessor is gathering a whole lot of information, as much as they can prior to the assessment. Then, of course, the face-to-face in the home situation, and then following that there may be other connections and other information gathering. If it's a very complex situation, it may come back to a case conference situation back with the rest of the team. So even though you only have one person at the home with you at any one time, is usually the case, they have access to the expertise of the rest of the professions in their team and can talk through your case so that we have the best outcome for the client. So that is something that's available to ACATs. RAS can have informal conversations and even formal conversations with their team, but it is more specific to ACAT. And I think even though it's a complex role, it's a privilege to be invited into people's homes, and therefore people that choose to be assessors are really have that interest in people and their well-being.
I agree. I think that's what we all have in common. It's an honour to work with people, particularly our older Australians, and assist having an individual, independent life at home. Yeah, great. The machinations sort of behind the scene. Did you want to talk a little bit more
about the, on picking up that after the assessment, there's, with the ACAT assessment, they can't really decide on all the support plan recommendations in the home, because the information has to be taken and considered by the ACAT delegate. That's especially a trained member of the ACAT team who is exercising a power or role under the Aged Care Act to decide on the level of care and the type of care and your eligibility for care under the Act. So the recommendations are there, and the delegate has to look at all the evidence and make it an administrative decision about you. Sometimes the delegate may not agree or may come back to an assessor for more clarification or more information. But usually those processes take place in 2 days, that sort of process. And then, so the delegate has to agree, so the recommendation might be for home care, level, whatever the level is, and then the delegate has to then confirm that in the My Aged Care system, and when that happens, that sets a process of that approval being transmitted to the Department of Human Services. But after that, the formal process also is that you as a person, not only do you get your support plan, but you also get this a letter called an approval letter, or if you are not eligible and there are other things to be considered about your care, you may get a formal notification that you've applied for care but you're not eligible. So all those letters will have very clearly what the decisions are and what the reasons why they've been made, what the evidence has been to contribute to that decision, and also information about if you don't agree, like hopefully you can discuss that with your assessor before you go through a formal process. But there is also a process where if you anyone whose interests are affected by the decision can ask for a review of that decision to the department delegate.
Okay, so a review process.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So gone full circle and
Yes,
review that
yes.
again. Beautiful. That's great. So it's quite an involved process, but there's a schematic process, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with extremely intelligent and passionate people, which is just fantastic. Thank you, ladies. Now, we're really coming towards the end of the session. I've got one more question from Gwen, and it's about the RAS ACAT. Does being referred from RAS to ACAT mean that you have to be back on the list of another assessment?
I guess yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
I guess yes, it does. And depending on your needs, your wait might be very short, or your wait might be a little point in time. That's why sometimes RAS will put in a link to an interim service that might go part way to meeting your needs. I think if you feel your assessment has been at the wrong level and it's quite urgent that you need the ACAT, then you might be in contact either with the contact centre, or if you have already been in touch with your local ACAT, that might be a starting point. But the time frames, I'm generalising nationally, the time frames for an ACAT assessment shouldn't be that long either, so it should be in a fairly timely fashion.
Beautiful. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Judy. Are there anything that you would like to add, Jess? I know.
I have one thing around complaints. Or
Okay,
feedback.
yes, do.
So when we've talked about the support plan and then the assessor leaving their contact details, but there's also you may have some concerns that then you need to discuss with the assessor after your assessment. So I think assessment organisations are very happy to talk to you if you've got any worries or concerns about your assessment process that they need to answer. And then on the website, I think we've got that link up there to if you have had a home support assessment, what the complaints process is, if you've had an ACAT assessment. So I think it's important for people to know. It's really, complaint sounds a bit negative, but it's feedback as well.
Yeah. And it might be just something slight that you can fix.
Yes.
Well, generally your assessor will leave a contact and also sort of a local complaints directive with you, and they would be your first port of call. It might be something that can be fixed really quickly over the phone or with another visit, or it might be something that is more complicated and more serious, in which case you would go to the formal Commonwealth complaints.
Yes. So I think everyone's quite committed and passionate about aged care and aged care assessment that works in the industry.
Yeah.
So I think we're always happy. We realise that it's a fairly new system since 2015. As despite everyone's best efforts, sometimes things don't go according to the formal business process, and people are people. So we always want to improve the system. We want to improve the people, the processes. So we just said, if there are issues or problems, then we need to hear back about them, and we do take them seriously.
Yes. Excellent. Well, thank you both for your time. You're a wealth of information, and again, it all comes back to if we get the information and the education and we work collaboratively, it will work better. Absolutely. Lovely. And thank you to all joining us today. And Gwen, thank you for your pertinent questions. We will make the links on the website, the Facebook page. Please, there'll be an information page coming out in the next couple of weeks with each webinar session. And again, thank you so much. We'll catch you, I think, August 30. Bye-bye.